Hey YouTube, making a video on recent surgery I had done, as is evidenced by this guy here. I had a C5, C6 disc herniation, and I had that guy removed and had an artificial disc put in instead, the Mobi-C artificial disc. A fantastic decision in hindsight. I'm really glad that I did it. It was not done without a ton of thought and research that went into it ahead of time, some of which was looking for videos just like this online, and there were a few, so thank you to those guys who had done a similar video, but certainly could benefit from as much information as possible. So that's kind of the goal behind and the reason for putting this video out there. So a little backstory about my condition and kind of the decision-making process that led up to doing the surgery. So I'm only 33 years old. In my early 20s, I started having a lot of neck pain, and basically come to find out it was because of this C5, C6 disc herniation that was pushing on my spine. Apparently I was fortunate that the herniation wasn't pushing on a nerve, and therefore I didn't have any radicular symptoms. For example, pain, numbness, burning, etc., shooting down either of my arms. Instead, it was pushing directly back onto my spinal cord and causing a lot of headaches almost daily, and causing just a lot of neck pain. And then a few times a year, inevitably I would do something, whether in the weight room or playing basketball or even sleeping. One time I aggravated this herniated disc while sleeping. And around that time I knew that it was time to figure out a way to treat this thing. So, but whenever I would aggravate it and it would flare up, it would just be this debilitating pain for a week or more until it died back down, and it was pretty rough. But again, I didn't have the radicular symptoms. So I say all that to say that's why I was able to put off the surgery for going on 10 years. Whereas some of you guys may not have that luxury. But ultimately, the reason why I finally decided to have the surgery is because, number one, the conservative treatment was not working. So I tried, physical therapy. I tried the shots. Really, the thing that helped the most was just activity modification. So if being the big important word there, if I could pinpoint what activities were causing it to flare up, then I could just not do those activities. The problem was I wasn't always able to pinpoint those things. So there were some obvious things like doing shrugs in the weight room or back squats, deadlifts. Those hurt. But then, like I said, when you hurt yourself sleeping, I was on my back and I went to kind of push off to roll over to my side. The next time you do that, notice that a lot of times you'll push off with the with the back of your head, you'll push off of your pillow. And just by doing that, man, it flared that thing up, and I was in a world of hurt for about a week or more. So decision-making process leading up to it. So conservative treatment wasn't working. So I went to see a surgeon. And here's what I can tell you about that. See a lot. Get at least a few recommendations. I know that firsthand because the first guy that I went to, now this was 3 years ago in 2013. Apparently insurance companies back in 2013 weren't approving the disc replacement surgery quite as much as they are today. It was still being done, but this neurosurgeon, who's a reputable guy, he took one look at me and said, "You would be a great candidate for disc replacement surgery, but unfortunately your insurance company won't approve it. So we have to do fusion, and you need fusion done soon, so let's go ahead and get you on the schedule." Well, so I got on the books not knowing any better, and fortunately in the few weeks leading up to the surgery, I was doing some more research on my own and contacted my insurance company, and they're like, yeah, you're a good candidate for the disc replacement surgery. So, it was an honest mistake, but people make honest mistakes, so that's why you get more than one opinion. So needless to say, I was excited to hear that, and I canceled the fusion surgery. And for you guys who don't know, ultimately fusion, once it's done, it's done. There's nothing you can do to undo that. Whereas with disc replacement, worst case scenario is it doesn't work and they have to fuse it. So you really don't have anything to lose, in my opinion. So that's why, especially being as young as I am, I didn't want to lose the range of motion that is common by fusing. And I also didn't want to put the additional stress on the vertebrae and disc above and below where my herniated disc is. And that also is more common with fusion. So all that to say, if you're a candidate for disc replacement, do it. You have nothing to lose. If fusion is your only option, well, it's not a bad option, and it's been around forever. So, but disc replacement is just a little bit better for the reasons that I mentioned in my circumstance. So anyhow, I talked to a couple more surgeons about disc replacement, and because it hasn't been around too long, I don't know, 10, 15 years here in the States, there's not a ton of people who have done thousands of these things. So beware of that. And I ran into that myself. I was living in Ohio at the time, and I'm sure there are some great surgeons, but the ones that I came across just didn't give me a whole lot of confidence that they've done a bunch of these. They've done a lot of fusions, but haven't done a lot of disc replacements. So my job took me down to Dallas. Dallas obviously is a huge city here in the U.S., and I thought, I'm gonna do a little research and see what kind of surgeons are down here. And sure enough, Dr. Blumenthal out of Texas Back Institute was like 15 minutes from my house. His practice was. He was the first surgeon to do a lumbar disc replacement in the United States, and his practice, he and a few of his colleagues, they focus on nothing but disc replacement surgeries. So they have done thousands of these, and they know them really well. And so, man, that gave me a world of confidence in speaking with them as opposed to some of the other guys I had spoken with. And it just became very clear that this was their specialty and they really knew their stuff. So the other thing that gave me a lot of confidence and that I would suggest, doing some research on is you have, a handful of discs that are available to you that are FDA approved, and every surgeon isn't going to know how to do every disc. So for me, the Mobi-C disc is the one that I wanted. It's spelled Mobi-C. Mobi-C is the one I wanted because some of the others I had looked at and done research on required either a screw to be screwed into your vertebrae, the upper and lower. So in my case, the C5, C6, I would have permanent screws in there, or they would have to chisel out basically a channel in each of those vertebrae for the keel that's on the top and bottom of some of those discs to ride into that channel. That just sounds awful. And there's a ton of people who do it. It works well. The guys know what they're doing, but Mobi-C came out here not too long ago, and it doesn't have the keel that requires the channel. It doesn't have permanent screws that are required. Basically, it has teeth, for lack of a better term, on top and on bottom of the end plates. And those teeth pretty much press fit into the bottom and the top of your vertebrae. So it's just less destructive on your vertebrae, which is always good. And then the other thing I really like about it, and that really helped me in speaking with the surgeon, was understanding that, again, doing this thing at 33, I asked him, what are the odds of this disc not wearing out in the next 50, 60 years, right? Lord willing, I have that long to live. And he said, obviously I haven't been around that long, so there's no guarantee. However, if it was to wear out, it's going to be the poly insert in between those two metal plates, that's going to wear out. And you can go in and just take out that insert and put in a new one. You don't have to take those plates off of your vertebrae that are press fit on there with those teeth. So again, less destruction to your vertebrae. So all that to say that went into the decision-making process for me and was big. And so I tell you all that because those are some of the things that I would think of too as you're deciding on whether to do this thing. Your surgeon, are they qualified? Are you comfortable with their expertise? Which disc do they use? Are you comfortable with that disc? And are you a good candidate for it? Meaning, is the conservative treatment that you've tried not working? And if all of those things are the case, and you are a good candidate for the surgery, then bottom line, if I had to do it over again, I would do it in a heartbeat. Let me tell you a little bit about leading up to the surgery, the day of, and then post-surgery, and then I'll wrap up here. So, morning of the surgery, I had to be there, I don't know, a couple hours before. I had never had surgery before, so I was a little nervous, didn't know what to expect. And the surgery wasn't bad at all. They basically put an IV in shortly before they took me back. And shortly after the IV went in is when the medicine went in for the anesthesia, and I was out. So I don't like needles, I don't like IVs, but it was pretty painless and very quick before I was out. Surgery itself lasted about an hour, hour and a half. Once the surgery was over, I was able to eat, I think twice that day. I ate 2 different meals later that day. So surgery in the morning, ate a couple meals that afternoon. You're on good pain medicine, so you're not in a whole lot of pain. You know, 2 kind of funny things that I was a little worried about prior to surgery was, number 1, having to do a catheter. I'd never had one before, and as we all know, that should be an exit only, right? But at times you have to do it, and I knew that this was potentially one of those times where they would have to insert a catheter, and thank the good Lord they did not. And if they do in your case, you're obviously asleep when it goes in and when it comes out, but still, hopefully you won't have to do one, just like I didn't have to, because the surgery was only an hour, hour and a half. The other thing I was nervous about is they do have to intubate you, meaning they have to put a breathing tube down your throat once you are asleep. And, you know, not having that done ever prior, I was a little nervous about that. And because of that, one of the potential risks, so to speak, is once the surgery is done, then in the process of them taking that out, it may just irritate your throat, and you can feel like you have a pretty sore, scratchy throat for a few days, potentially some swelling, that sort of thing. And, you know, I was blessed. I didn't have any of those things. I knew that they were risk, but it just didn't happen. So just be aware that that's the case, but also be aware that, like myself, there are a lot of people who don't have those symptoms. So nothing to be afraid of. But that's, you know, pre-surgery. Post-surgery wasn't too bad. Range of motion, guys, is very good. I'm still a little sore at the extremes. But my range of motion is very, very good. What else can I tell you? It's, you know, it's an expensive surgery. I don't know, probably 50, 55 grand. But with insurance, you pay your deductible or your out-of-pocket max, and you're not even going to come close to that amount. And, you know, if you have the money and you don't have insurance, you got to pay it out of pocket, the full amount. I mean, what's your quality of life worth? And, you know, all that to say, for me, it was well worth the money I had to pay for it, for my deductible and out-of-pocket max, and I think you'll have the same experience. So I will probably load up another video in the next 4 or 6 weeks, just to give you an idea of how the scar is looking and that sort of thing. But when it's all said and done, guys, do your research leading up to it. You know, always assess the risk versus the reward. But in my experience, it was absolutely worth it. All right, thanks guys.